Shieldmaster9000 made a bullshit video about Bakugo redeeming himself after his duel with Deku, which is a lie because that is not what redemption is about. Deku may have forgiven him, and forgiveness may be about giving someone a second chance. But that is not redemption, which is all about someone making up for all the damage he caused. Bakugo didn't fix a thing. As expected, Shieldmaster's video caused a reaction in the community, many of which were struggling to explain why he was their favorite character since the very beginning and he didn't need this fake redemption to become likable. Liking a character for being a jerk is dumb, and it works in shonen stories only because they forgive a character too easily. Bakugo has done some pretty horrible things in front of countless people and constantly gets away with it. They seem annoyed for a few seconds, but then they forget it and there is never any punishment for his horrible behavior. It's easy to find a character cool if he's being a jerk and the story lets him get away with it. It's even worse with someone like Vegeta, who has killed billions and debutards just want to see him kick the crap out of everyone instead of getting what he deserves. It's easy to be fooled by Naruto's stuck no jutsu if he can make the worst of humanity into good guys with childish idealism, and there are superpowers to resurrect all the people someone has killed. It's easy for Usopp to forgive Luffy after being thrown out of the crew, when they joke about it as if it was never serious, even if it was while it was happening. But even so, forgiving someone or not minding all the horrible things he did, it's still not redemption. Light at the end of Death Note did not redeem himself for all the things he did. Lulu at the end of Code Geass did not make up for the billions of people he killed and brainwashed, and he certainly did not bring a lasting peace with the worthless people he left behind as leaders. The shows make it seem tragic, but that doesn't make it right. There is no way to forgive that, no way to fix all the harm they did, no way to redeem such characters. Now, obviously, Bakugo hasn't done that many horrible things, and it's not like he can't do a lot of good later on as a hero. The issue here is that he did not redeem himself, thus Shieldmaster's video is bullshit, and anyone who refuses to accept that is wrong. Even if everyone forgets all the crap he did, it's not even forgiveness. The show can make him look like a badass, and most hero tards can have him as their favorite character, but don't let yourselves be fooled as to why that happens. He did not redeem himself yet. He is still a jerk who gets away with it, and that makes him cool in the eyes of 10-year-old brats who like the idea of doing any bullshit they want and never be punished for it. Consequences make an event significant when there is cause and effect. If you have a threat that killed or mentally scarred thousands of people, and yet nothing changes after it is all over, how important was that event to begin with? If most of the characters change or die, but by the end of the story time resets, they get resurrected and forget everything that happened, what was the point of it all? You can still enjoy an episodic series as a collection of standalone events, but those events are eventually superficial and forgettable when there is not some sort of development. Development is a very misunderstood term since it doesn't simply mean a change. It also means not negating or forgetting events, meaning the nemesis of consequence is preserving the status quo. And no, I'm not saying everything needs to constantly be changing every 5 minutes, since that would be equally bad, but it definitely makes every new event significant when the characters mention or act upon previous events. The change doesn't even need to be visible. Being self-referential is enough to prove previous events were not forgotten. But even self-references need to be constant and not something that happens whenever it suits the plot. If you have 50 episodes of random nonsense and then the author feels like mentioning something everybody was neglecting in said 50 episodes, you don't have actual continuity. You can always use the excuse of enjoying the journey more than the destination. If you had fun while watching something, it doesn't matter if there was no payoff after it was over. That is, after all, why many shows are hyped while they are airing and get forgotten or are hated after they are over. You can call them entertaining, but they are not substantial exactly because there are no consequences to leave a permanent impression on you. If characters don't grow or change like we do, then we grow out of them. They eventually become distant or unrelatable. A way for this to be avoided is the viewer refusing to mentally grow up, so he can be permanently stuck in the same wavelength as his favorite characters. That is very damaging since he refuses the consequences of aging. Change feels threatening to many exactly because it has consequence on your favorite characters. Even if you don't like it, it still makes them far more memorable this way than if they remain static throughout the story. Without a change, they cannot escape the stereotype they begin as, or do not show how much they are not following the stereotype from the very beginning. I found a topic that doesn't tell you something I haven't pointed out already, but it does show how people on Reddit know what's going on and will admit it if you pressure them long enough. This topic, for example, is about giving flashback to villains as they die and how bad it is. Obviously, the example most were using was Demon Slayer, and as much as some were trying to defend it, the truth cannot be hidden. The number one justification everyone is using when they try to defend this horrible gimmick is saying it gives closure to a character. It fleshes him out and makes his death more emotional than if it was just a generic bad guy without a flashback. Oh, that's nice, but why does it have to happen in the very last moment and not before, so you will care about a character long before he dies? Wouldn't that make his death more emotional? And besides that, how can there be closure for a story that never had an opening to begin with? Another guy asks why Demon Slayer gets a pass when it's using this horrible gimmick in the exact same way as any other show. Last moment flashbacks are always about making a death emotional and offering closure to a story that never had an opening. So why do people give it a pass when it's the exact same shit as any other show that does it?
What really elevates this series above the usual fare of shonen works is how it manages to break the mold of what we've come to expect from the genre, and how it skillfully subverts our expectations.
Unlike nothing I've ever read before.
And the answer is because they like it. It gets a pass although it's not different than any other show that does the same shit, because they like it. They say it as if it's doing things differently than any other show, even when it isn't, and it gets a pass because they like it. That's how stupid they are. Do you want to be that stupid? Then use the exact same things when you don't like a show in another show that you like so you can give it a pass. Do you want to be that stupid?
Just not a fan of a wimpy main character, eventually becoming strong. Also, the character's very OP as well. I'm just not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of that, character.
And I also need to point this out as well. Why would they want to make you feel emotional at the last moment over a villain who did a lot of bad things? How do they expect you to feel sympathy for all the crap they did just because they are showing it in a flashback? It's not going to fix the harm they caused. It's not going to give the villain the chance to correct his mistakes. It's not going to make him a good guy in your eyes. And none of his victims will get to forgive him. It's literally shock effect. Just thrown in there out of nowhere just for the sake of making you feel emotional over an irredeemable mass murderer.
You killed my sister. You deserve to die. But I can understand how it's a sad point in your life, so let me just hold your hand while you pass away.
So if this gimmick is that stupid, everyone who is smart knows it's stupid, and everyone who is stupid becomes more stupid by giving it a pass, then why do they keep using it? The answer is serialized stories. How can they plan ahead when they can be cancelled at any moment? How can they spend time on fleshing out a character when the audience only cares about Sakuga? You saw what happened with Demon Slayer and how it's considered a masterpiece by the majority of anime fans. They don't give a shit about the plot, they just want pretty colors and feels, however cheap they may be. Why risk losing your audience by having 10 episodes of fleshing out someone when you can cram everything in 1 minute right before he dies? Yay, more time allocated to battles amongst people you don't give a shit about.
A lot of the troubles that these series go through because they're actually weekly. The fact that it is weekly. The big problem with that is because they're weekly. One of the big pitfalls for a lot of these stories is the fact that they're weekly.
I found a topic where people were discussing how the time travel aspect of Tokyo Revengers doesn't make any sense, and on top of that the protagonist uses it in a completely dumb way. The author didn't care about how it works, and it was just there as an excuse for conflicts. Conflicts which could have been prevented if the protagonist was smart, but that way we wouldn't have dumb fights and a story that doesn't end right away so the manga can make more money by dragging out the plot. When asked why would the author use time travel at all if the gang fights were always the main appeal, the answer is something I've been saying for years. Power fantasies are all about undoing the negative consequences. If the protagonist regrets his past decisions and wants to change the past so his present can be better, then time travel is a cheap way to do it. We can easily expand this to any other plot convenience that is all about undoing negative consequences, such as instant healing, resurrection, reincarnation in an isekai, mind control, and amnesia. A mature story would have the characters trying to become better people through their mistakes. A power fantasy, on the other hand, simply erases them so that the protagonist is perfect and nobody can accuse him of anything. If I bring sociology into this, the need for such stories has increased exponentially after the internet. The reason for that is because anything you publish on mass media usually stays there and anyone can find it decades later if he searches enough. Your whole life can be ruined by something you did or said when you were just a kid. This wasn't the case when mass media weren't so prevalent. Most of the dumb shit people were doing was not being recorded and stored somewhere. It was largely forgotten, and people would thus forgive you easier because they would either forget it or would not make a big fuss about it when no evidence of it remains. Since that is not an option anymore, the regret of past mistakes is 100 times bigger than it used to be, and so is public shame. And that is basically why so many modern anime are about time resets and isekai and amnesia. Because people don't forget and don't forgive so easily anymore. You can't get over your regret or become wiser if people keep throwing salt on the wound. It's easier to wish you could erase it from existence than to deal with it and become a better man through it.